I don't want to repeat what everybody else was saying, so I'll just kind of say that similar to what we're already hearing is education and the willingness to open up to listen to other people is the beginning. And participation, those are the things that have to happen. I think our society is not bent on that because individualism, again, and forward movement are more important than anything else. And we've lost that sense of community good in many cases. Not individually. I choose to think that most people still are good and still wants to do something good. It's on a larger scale that they don't see those opportunities available, or they don't think that they can make those changes. So the dog and pony shows really have to, I think, even before we start making bills, build some sort of a background, grassroots understanding that we might not all agree on every single thing, but I would hope that there are areas that we would be able to come to commonality on. And if you say to me what's, the beginnings of that is what is it that we want for our children? What is it we want for our grandchildren? Those, I don't care if you're 19 or 18, you can vote. I don't care if you're 78, 90 years old. That's really what I think we have to start with. And that is part of this understanding of that cycle, that circle. That I grew up in the south side of Chicago, just 10 seconds real quickly, and I remember as a young 7, 8-year-old going to meetings and hearing the mayor and the politicians say, we will raise the taxes. And then there was a grumble. And then I heard him say, we will raise the taxes so that your children will live a better life than you live. They will have better education, they will have better safety, and better parks and so on. And then I watched them go to the votes, and they voted for the people who were raising their taxes. That type of idea is gone. That idea that we have something that we have to give back. It's more individual. So I hope that a solution that we think is where do we, as the dog and pony show, I guess that's kind of the click word right now. Where do we, as the concerned members of our community, come into that play to try to activate what I think is really at the hearts of most people, and that's to do good. I think most people do want to do good. And right now they're being told you're doing good by how much money you have in your wallet. You're doing good by how big your house is. You're doing good by how much your car's worth. And we have another message, or we have at least a message that can parallel that. You're doing good by how much you've been able to accomplish, but also give back. And I think that doesn't just mean Christian or Muslim. That means humankind. And we have to look at that because our air, our water, our plants, our animals, our whole planet are dependent upon that kind of a concept. And it's no longer Ed Gomez can go off and make a whole bunch of money for himself and screw everybody else. I think we have to begin to think, what do we owe back on that balance? So that would be the way to do it, is start educating people on the premises of where we can come together. I think the first thing is all of us should be concerned, where's humankind going? And what are we going to leave behind? So that's what I would say.
With all due respect to the old fogies in the room, I really want to direct my comments to the young people. We have a handful of young people in the room, and I really want to talk to you personally. And sociologists like to tell stories, so I'll tell a very quick story. I was at the Museum of Tolerance a few years ago and saw a survivor of the Holocaust. He had the Auschwitz numbers on his arms, and I asked them the question, could the Holocaust, the German Jewish Holocaust, happen in the United States? And what do you suppose his answer was? He said no. And why? The Holocaust happened in a place that was one of the most advanced societies in human history. Musically, scientifically, economically, the most advanced of all societies. And he said it could not happen here because we have a democracy here. And to me, that's just, you've cut yourself off from history. If you don't think it can't happen here, if you don't think that it hasn't happened here, my family has a Holocaust history, 250 years of slavery, 250 years of slavery. That's our personal Holocaust. And so it has happened here, it can happen here. But what happens when good people are silent? What happens? Bad things happen. Bad things happen. So I would suggest to you that you don't depend. Okay, so here's the end of education is the key, right? That you don't depend on education, that you teach yourselves, that you study, study, study. Not only your history, but everybody else's history. Because when you know you're right, there's something about knowing that you're right. There's something about knowing that you have done your homework. Nothing can turn you around. Renea knows she's right. That's why, you know, I think about the Supreme song, ain't no mountain high enough, right? Ain't no mountain high enough. When you know you're right, nothing can stop you. So you have got to learn, learn, learn. My kids used to say when they were growing up that what's going to be on my tombstone is, I want to see the manager. Because that's what they used to hear me say all the time. And learn the story of Don Quixote. Tilting at windmills, always fighting battles, always fighting. When I leave home, I put my armor on. I was in the post office not too long ago. Two people were having a conversation about, you know, directing their thoughts to a young Latina and her mother and 3 kids, and they were saying, just look at them. They come over here and they take. And I turned to them and I said, well, you all were immigrants too, right? Weren't you guys immigrants too? Yes, but our immigration was different. Well, no, it's not. People came over here for education. People came over here for a better life for their families. And you are saying that these people don't have a right to be here. And then, you know, things got loud, of course, and I find I'm the only person of color in the whole post office. So I quieted down because you know what's going to happen when the cops come, right? So you have to use your head. You've got to use your head when you're tilting at these windmills. But fight, fight, fight. And speak up when you see something not right. Just speak up, whether it's gender, race, class, sexual orientation, which we have not talked about today, but our gay brothers and sisters are catching hell. Pardon me, Reverend. But, you know, they're catching hell. They're catching hell. And we need to, regardless of what we think morally, I always tell students, if you think being gay is wrong, then don't be one. But if you think, leave them alone. Leave them alone. And even take up for them. Take up for them. Keep tilting at those windmills. Thank you.
Well, thank you for that 5 minutes. I was taken aback a few months back. A very good friend of mine, I won't say his name, but he's a Mexican American, a very good friend of mine. He said, thank God for President Obama, because really before that I didn't really know much about anything that black people had done of significance. And so I kind of didn't know what to say. But anyway, I regrouped. And as it turns out, something I've known forever is that when you look back in the earliest times, the first physician, Imhotep, that's recorded history is Imhotep. His time dates back to about 2,600 years BC, which means before the time of Christ. So we know Christ was here because the calendar was based on that, before Christ, and AD means after his death. So right now we're in the year 2011 AD. But anyway, his time has been right around 2600 BC, that's Imhotep. And they found something called the Ebers Papyrus in Egypt. And so the first pharmacists were black. The modern, if you look it up, you go put in Ebers Papyrus in your Google. And you'll find, as a matter of fact, I wanted to say real quick because we're in a digital age, if you put in American Medical Association racial discrimination ends in your computer, you'll pull up a lot of what I just talked about, some of what I talked about anyway. But anyway, the Ebers Papyrus is a pharmacopoeia, if you will, or a book of which it said that modern pharmacology today, that is how you get your drugs, your medications, was based upon that. What modern medicine did was to use the same things, the leaves, the foxglove was a leaf. And when they found the active ingredients was something called digitalis. And so they were able to chemically make that, and so you can get digitalis, which is used for congestive heart failure, with all the other side effects of if you just boil the leaf and took it, you get digitalis, and there are a lot of things you didn't want. So that's modern medicine as opposed to what they did in the ancient times, but still the things work. And that was the pharmacopoeia, and that dates back to Egypt, 1500 BC. And coming on down to more modern times, the first heart surgery was done at Providence Hospital in Chicago. And that was as a result of a gunshot wound to the heart. It was a black surgeon who actually went in, and he was the first case whereby a gunshot or any injury to the heart or any heart surgery at all had been done. That was in Chicago, 1893. You fast forward to the 1950s, there was a Charles Richard Drew. He developed the mechanism through which we are able to store blood. Before his time, you couldn't store blood before the 50s. Could not store it because it would go bad fast. But anyway, he developed the system, and ironically, he died of a hemorrhage after an auto accident when the white hospital would not give him blood. Because in those days, the blood was separated into black blood and white blood. And if the black blood wasn't available, now the question becomes if there was no, if you were white, if there was no white blood available, I think things would get worse a little bit. But if you were black and no black blood, you were in trouble. In Chicago, I was the nearest hospital I could even go to when I was growing up. It was only a few blocks away. In the 70s, microvascular surgery, which is a technique that's needed for if you have a coronary bypass procedure. There's a heart procedure that's done to replace the bad veins or arteries, I should say, that go to the heart that can predispose you to a heart attack. Well, when it comes to microvascular surgery, it was not developed not by a black physician, but by a black medical technician. He practiced in the laboratory. Okay, I'm running out of time. We got to move along. But anyway, okay, I can't tell you that story either. But anyway, today, the two top neurosurgeons in the world, one is Keith Black, he's at Cedars-Sinai. They built a whole neurosurgery medical program around him. And the other one, Ben Carson's on the East Coast. Two top neurosurgeons in the world, they get referrals from all over the world, are black physicians. As I mentioned, I was the first black residency-trained physician in emergency medicine in the Department of Emergency Medicine at Cedars-Sinai Medical Center. Nobody you wouldn't imagine that, I'm sure, but back in the 80s, I was the first one. And so I said all that to say, so number one, education, excellence. Number two, we have to elect officials such as Renee, who will go out and fight for you, because a lot of this is just political, it has nothing to do with cost, or very little to do with cost, it's more political than anything. And number three, finally, even better than standing up and talking, file a lawsuit. After all I've done, I was told in 2009 I wasn't good enough to work in the urgent care when I applied at Martin Luther King Hospital. I'm in federal court right now with them. With the county's attorneys, I got them all in court. I'm also a civil surgeon of the United States government, so I did the physicals for the military, for immigration, and so I have them in federal court right now, but I'm out of time and I have to run. But sue them.